Hi guys, I'm Shmee. Hello and welcome back to the channel where you rejoin me today back at Topaz Detailing with my SLS AMG Black Series. Now of course the newest Shmee-mobile is here, having full paint protection film installed, and the work has been going at a very quick pace. In fact, it is nearly finished. There are a few things to talk about today. We will touch on what's going on to do with the templates on the front splitter, also the front flicks. I think there's some PPF to be installed on the diffuser, and only one of all of the Mystic Blue panels is still actually waiting to have PPF installed. That's quite how invisible it is. So we're nearly there at the completion stages where I'll be able to take it out to go for a drive for the first proper time in the blue SLS. But today, let's see how it's coming together here at Topaz as we go through a few of the stages. Even for me, coming back here to Topaz to see this car is still so incredibly exciting, obviously having made a pretty big commitment to change the colour of it from the grey to the Mystic Blue, but it is looking awesome. We still need to talk about the wheels to get those done as well, but in the meantime, the paintwork is being protected. The important thing is that Topaz have had some very complimentary words to say about the paintwork done by Chartwell. It was very, very much polished and detailed to an incredibly high standard to begin with, so paint protection film has basically been able to go on over the top of all of the panels. As we're looking at it here, and you wouldn't really be able to tell, but basically everything's been done. The door has film on, the sills have film on, all of these carbon parts have it on, the carbon mirrors I had ordered and bought for the car have it on as well. The bonnet, which is one gigantic part, of course, plus the additional carbon vent, but that is a huge, huge piece from a single roll of paint protection film. Around the front, even the headlights actually have a bit of film on to protect those from cracking in future. But what's going on down here then, you might wonder. You can see at the moment we've got a partially installed piece of film. The reason for this is to do with the templates. Now Topaz always have the finest of templates, all adjusted to be exact to the car, and obviously this kind of technology and ability is moving forward as time goes by, and in the case of the SLS Black Series, it's a car that's about, well, 7 years old or so, so the original templates from back then didn't quite have the same level of refinement as they do now. For example, the way that you can't see any edges, the way they wrap around, the film has changed and improved over time as well. In the case of the splitter here, the original template actually only ends, it's quite hard to see this, kind of halfway down that front lip, and they're going to be adjusting it, so this is going through a few stages to make sure that the new template and then the material that's cut away from the car, remember, no blades go near the car, is done so that it can wrap underneath to protect that leading edge. Leading edges are always kind of the most vulnerable on a car like this. Now one thing that's been done as well that's really good, if I come round towards the driver's side of the car to show you this, open up the doors, where inside I also bought, you might remember, these carbon fibre pieces for the door sills. These are of course very vulnerable because when you climb in, your feet kind of drag over this high sill, and so this now has protection film as well. And again, like I say, you can't see it. You don't know that it's been there. It's been wrapped all the way around the edges, but obviously will protect the carbon or the lacquer on top of the carbon from getting any kind of scratches. Now at this stage, we're going to be coming back to see the interior being finished and being perfected, of course, when we also get things like the installation of the badges around the back. But for the time being, we've got some of these fiddly parts as well to see on the diffuser, and also around the front, to touch on them quickly, we're going to be taking off these flicks to re-lacquer them because they've got a few stone chips on them. And obviously these are one of the original parts, not having been painted like the rest of the bumper, but we're going to get those done now. I chose not to do them before, probably a mistake. We're going to get them done, get them PPF'd afterwards as well, so that will all be fine. And I think I am going to replace, I might have talked about this before, this part. This is an original kind of cheapy plastic part underneath, but it's a little bit warped where it's been caught before, and I think I'm going to get that replaced in the not too distant future as well. So that's where we're up to right now. Some work to be done on it today, and then not too far now until it's all done. It is PPF time, starting with some parts of the diffuser. Now the diffuser of this car is made up of about 5 separate parts, which of course all need to be cleaned, panel prepped first to make sure there are no dust particles or anything that is sitting on them. But you can imagine you have some of these outer facing parts, there are some underneath sections with the diffuser almost, well, less, not so much blades like let's say the Senna has, but you've still got these different shapes where it comes down towards the very centre at the back, and those all need to have different pre-cut templated pieces basically in order to make sure it's got coverage. And this is quite important because if you think about the rear tyres, they kind of flick stones up, obviously the aero is flicking stones up, and you don't want these back areas to get scratched as well, just like some of the body paint, because you don't want the carbon to look nasty after all as well. We are slightly wondering how we're going to do the number plate.
plinth bracket at the moment because that is kind of, well, riveted on. So it's going to be a bit difficult to work out how we do that exactly. But that's happening. Simultaneously, some templates are being made to do with the roof. Now this we will see later in action, but basically the roof panel piece is going to be adjusted compared to the current template. But obviously the material will be back rolled and the first pieces can go on. Step 1, we'll have a quick recap of this. The slip solution that goes over the surface. Again, this will all be squeegeed off to make sure that the surface is effectively prepped. Obviously you've got the chrome exhaust tailpipe tips, which I do actually think are really, really nice. Obviously those are just the tailpipe finishes. So even if this car gets a new exhaust system, which I don't think it will specifically to do with the back box, because it has a titanium exhaust back box, but some of the through sections, but those will always remain and they look really nice. And they will look very nice when those are silver as well. Silver and a few other silver touches around the car. So that now has the slip solution on the surface, ready to have the panel that rolled and, well, started to be maneuvered into place. How about this for the prime example of an awkward shape? It curves around, obviously the bottom section and the top section, going around the exhaust tailpipes, all on one piece of pre-cut film. That is both hard to back roll and hard to maneuver into place because obviously it needs to match up around the other side as well. But I always find this process completely mesmerizing. How you've got that panel that is eventually you're going to completely be integrated over the top of the lacquer on the carbon fibre and be invisible. And, well, I just think it's mesmerising to watch, really. And quite enjoyable to see the process in action each and every time that we do it on the different Schmiedenmobiles. Some more slip solution top and bottom so that it can be manoeuvred around, but also so that when the squeegee is used over the top, it doesn't end up scratching the film or anything like that. Remember, the film is self-healing, so with a bit of heat you can take out light surface scratches and things, but obviously best avoided if you possibly can. And these templates are all pre-made, tested, fitted or adjusted if they need to be adjusted for the different car. But in the case of this, it should go straight into place, and it looks like it's going to be able to do that with a bit of manoeuvring before eventually fixing it down. A bit of fixed solution then goes into the corner, which obviously will give it a kind of a pinch point to be the position from which the work starts. So obviously squeegeeing that out, which means it is effectively held down there and can now be adjusted working away from that point. But obviously this is where it gets a little bit complicated. There's actually a relief cut just inside on the design there. You might be able to just spot that up there, which is to do with the shape, obviously working with where the indents are to ensure it can all come together. Most of these top sections have now been done, but as you can see, this is not exactly the easiest in the world. This car has a particularly awkward shape here for the protection film to be put into place and squeegeed into place. As you can see, the excess liquid comes out, wraps around, and it basically disappears in front of our eyes. It goes around the contours and various shapes. It's all starting to come into place. You can see just going around here towards the back now. When all that is done, it will be the same on the other side. A random thing that I quite like is this, the German Umweltzone sticker. Now this is what you need to drive into the city centres in many cities in Germany, to be honest, but obviously it would need to have the number plate or license plate that matches up with the one that goes on the car, whereas that has, from obviously the original glass that was taken out and put back in, the previous owner's details. But there's something quite cool about having that, because of course the car was imported from Germany. It's a left-hand drive, originally German delivered car, so I can't decide if I want to keep it or if I'm going to take it off. Obviously it's kind of defunct, but it's kind of cool in some strange way. I'm probably going to remove it, but for the time being, it's kind of fun that it's sitting there. A few minutes later, this side section has been installed. Also, those central areas, which are now being warmed up, obviously the hairdryers, to get those fixed into place. Around the car, you have various different panels, some of which are easier than others. Of course, shapes like this, where it curves outwards and then inwards over the roof on a normal car is always quite difficult, because you have a slight curve from side to side, but also from front to back, which means the film has to be worked over to do that. Something like the bonnet, despite the fact that it's huge, is a lot easier because it is a fairly flat panel overall. A few other things being done to do with the templating of various bits around and about. And something else I wanted to touch on actually is to do with the calipers. The calipers are of course the gold. Every SLS Black Series has the gold carbon ceramic calipers as standard. AMG normally have gold for their carbon ceramics. In the case of the GTR Pro, they are titanium silver, but normally they're gold. So I quite like the gold with the blue. I know it might work better if they were perhaps red to match with some of these interior touches, like the red seat belts, the red piping, the red 12 o'clock stripe, red stitching, etc, etc. And I do quite like the gold, so I want to see what they look like behind silver wheels to then form an opinion later on that, rather than making the decision a little bit earlier. This is quite an interesting part of the process then. This is basically doing a test fit. So a part of the panel that has been cut just for this purpose. It's not going to be the final piece. As you can see, it's not a completely clean finish. Obviously it will be one part overall, but this allows allows to find the edges, to do any adjustments or minor adjustments that need to be made, and then go back to the template and adjust them, obviously as required, whether this fits perfectly or not in place. And obviously it will be mirrored from one side to the other, because it's one consistent piece, but on the template software it allows to literally kind of copy paste and do the other side and all roll it into one. So this will be affixed, and then a decision will be taken if it's good or not. Now that the panel has been installed, this is where measurements are basically taken going round just to completely make a new template absolutely precise. Obviously we can tell from how it's fitted how it's going to go and make all of those adjustments, which will mean when the full piece goes on, it is spot on. Obviously all of these other touches have to be done as well, things like the door handles, all of the different small areas that you have around the car, just as vulnerable as everywhere else, so they all get templated parts installed as well. The new template has been made then, and of course given the size of this and the fact that it's one piece that goes up through the centre of the gullwing doors and then around the A-pillars at the very front, it is a two-man operation to do the back rolling the material over the top before the application to make sure it is in place, as we have seen with the slip solution and then with the fixed solution. But all perfectly made to fit this car absolutely spot on. And just like that, you can see how the A-pillar pieces come down, and it will be fully applied as we've seen before. Now that it's all in place, of course it will be dried out, the edges will be pushed in as well, obviously tucking in underneath any seals or anything like that. And eventually that is going to be complete. In fact, I think at this stage, everything on this car that is Mystic Blue now has PPF installed. The beauty of it is that you just cannot see. Really and truly at the edges, some of the thinnest lines in some places, this invisible film that, like I've said in the previous video talking about this, you can replace if it ever gets chipped, if for example the front gets stone chips, if one of the quarter panels or wings of the car gets scratches from buttons or a bag, if somebody's walking past and they scratch against it or lean up against the car to take a photo, something like that, all easy to replace. Or of course if it's parked outside and it gets some bird droppings or some tree droppings sitting on the top, it could actually damage the paintwork, and it will lock in the beautifully detailed finish underneath the film. PPF is such a win on very, very many fronts in terms of keeping a car looking beautiful in the future. Of course, we do still have the splitter and a few other bits and pieces around, the front flicks for example, which we'll catch up with, I think, on a future visit, a future return, when it's ready to see it being completed. Things like the badges going on, those final touches, the interior being cleaned up, the number plates as well, of course, and then driving it out in Mystic Blue for the first time, all to come quite soon, I hope. There are a few more bits and pieces that have now been fitted as well, so including around the front on the headlights, where the washer jets come out, even those small parts, which of course are gloss black, those need to be protected. Obviously they come out to actually clean the headlamp units themselves. Basically every small thing has attention to detail paid to it. The car is now plugged in to its trickle charger, which in this car very conveniently plugs in inside the boot. Lithium trickle charger, given it's got a lithium lightweight battery, so of course it won't go flat or anything overnight. But basically, this car is now not all that far from being ready. I will pop back so that we can see the completion stages, the likes of the badges and everything else, as I've mentioned and described before. It will be time to take it on out. So a big thanks, as always, to the guys here at Topaz for having me to see what's going on with this car. It's not that far now until it's fully protected. A bit of an update today though, some progress, seeing how it all happens, and of course, yeah, I just find it mesmerising watching paint protection film being installed. That's it for now though, thank you very much for watching, as always guys, I'll see you again very soon. Cheers!